The biggest movie in the world right now is Top Gun Maverick, and they were brilliant making this movie. There's so many brilliant things they did that I don't think people realized how brilliant they were. And the older characters, reviving older characters just by their name mentioned in the original Top Gun, and then
Mm-hmm.
bringing in new characters like our guests, Emmy nominated actor, director, writer, producer. You might know him from Superstore, Snatched, Arrested Development, Single Parents, the mini project Glow on Netflix, Southside with his partner, Diallo Riddle, who's an Atlanta guy, by the way. But
Oh yeah.
Bashir Salahuddin, dude, Hondo, what a great character. Absolutely phenomenal character, Bashir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to talk with you guys.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, it's not like you're a neophyte to the entertainment industry. You've been clawing your way to the top for a while, including writing for Fallon for a minute, which is awesome because I love Jimmy Fallon. But
Yeah.
this is the brass ring, correct?
You know, it's you hear Tom Cruise and you think one thing, you think summer blockbuster. So I knew at the very least that this movie was going to be loud and big and exciting and have you on the edge of your seat, and all those things and more. It's all those things and more.
Yeah. Here it's funny when I first saw your character, because I knew we were going to have you on the show before I saw the movie, I think. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
when I first saw your character, I didn't know what character Hondo was. I'm doing research and seeing Hondo. My initial thought, I don't know if you've heard this yet, but from first glance, your character, you remind me of the big black guy in Independence Day that tries to stop Will Smith from taking the helicopter.
That's hilarious.
Have you heard that yet before?
I heard it just for the first time just now, right now with you. And I've heard some other ones too. That's definitely going in my prized possession things I've heard box.
Because I think if memory serves, that character is actually Will Smith's brother-in-law or something like that, and he threw him into the movie. But there's some guys that steal the scene or steal the show, as they say. And in Independence Day, he steals the show just by his facial expression. And I got to tell you, here, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, Jennifer Connelly's Jennifer Connelly, Miles Teller's Miles Teller. But dude, you really steal scenes in this movie from those that are built on top of you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to hear. That's why apparently everybody's clamoring for the Hondo spinoff. And by everybody, I mean my mother. But, look, I'm lucky to be a part of it. It's what's cool is that, like, the same sort of acting preparation that you do to do a very small black box theater production that 6 people are in the audience for and nobody cares about is the same preparation that you do when you're going to be on an aircraft carrier acting with Tom Cruise. And so as an actor, it's kind of like the same homework. The difference with this movie, and as you can tell, my castmates, they had to go do jet training. They had to go up in airplanes. They had to learn how to escape upside down underwater from, overturned cargo. They had to learn how to take those G's. So when people are watching the movie and they see people really being pressed into their seat, they're really being pressed into their seat. And the audience feels it. It's so visceral. My character, like with me, I do test flight operations, and I had to learn how to be a warrant officer. So spent a lot of time with warrant officers. Also spent a lot of time going to places like Lockheed Martin and learning about test aircraft that aren't even out yet that I got to see. They're amazing. And I got to say, America, you got some real cool stuff coming down the pipe. And I mean, there's just so much going on that was part of our education because Tom wanted to make sure, that everybody in this movie knew their stuff and had some experience with this role they were inhabiting. Every single body up there had to do their homework. But what a great movie to be a part of. I really feel like it's like a once in a lifetime thing.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Is Tom Cruise as anti-CGI as some of the news stories that I read, which means that he wants it as real as possible, where the production team flew a private jet beside the aircraft carrier to get live audio and the pictures, the actual jets landing and taking off?
I mean, I don't. You would know more than I would. That sounds awesome and exciting. And if it's awesome and he does it, I think to me the guy is a throwback. He's like, Buster. For those of you who are film buffs, like Buster Keaton, early filmmaker, but he would do incredible stunts. Where there's one online that everybody loves, where he's standing next to a house and the whole side of the house falls, and the only way he's missed is because the window falls on top of him. But if he's 1 inch to the left or right, then that's the last Buster Keaton movie we ever going to see. And I think that that's something that audiences feel. I think Tom is the same, man. He wants audiences to feel it, whether it's Mission Impossible and him really hanging on the side of a plane, or with this movie where you have actors actually experiencing G-forces. Tom himself is probably the only actor in American history who got actually catapulted off of an aircraft carrier in an F-18. That hasn't happened. But why is he doing all this stuff, right? He's doing it for the audience. One thing that we've talked about on set is that he doesn't take it for granted. He's like, look, I'm lucky. I get to do the thing I love for a living, and I've been doing it for, however many years. And so the only way that is relevant is that he takes it very seriously. He takes the fact that people work hard for their money and they're spending some of it on a product that we've all made. He takes that very seriously. I feel like I learned so much just watching his dedication. I learned what it means to have that level of longevity. I mean, because to be a movie star as long as he's done it, I don't think anybody's done that.
No. Was there any ad lib in this movie? Because, one of the lines that stands
There is some, yes.
Okay, so
yes,
before you tell us what it is, let me just point this out to the audience, is that it's just brilliant writing, because from the beginning of Top Gun Maverick, you're able to establish the relationship between your character Hondo and Maverick based off of I hate that look on your face, Mav. Well, that's the only look so that line, and it's used again at the end when he's taking off from the aircraft carrier to do the mission. I want to think some of that was improv or came up between you guys just, bonding, but I could be wrong.
That actually was written, and I'm so grateful that, Christopher McQuarrie and the other writers really, how do I say this? The movie is written before you get there, right? Like with every movie. But then but movies they're not static. They're sort of living things. And once your instinct is correct, and then once you start making the movie, you do have new writing that comes in, new scenes show up, new revisions show up. So that line that you noticed, I think that was actually created after the writer saw me and Tom actually hanging out and was on set with us, and we were all kind of just having camaraderie. And I think the writer had been looking for just a very simple way to encapsulate that friendship, because we shot the scene in the hallway deeper into production. And even though it's the earliest part of the movie, we shot that deep in production. We had already been doing lots of stuff before that. And so I bring all that up to say that your instinct is absolutely correct, and that so much of what you see on screen is from people watching what's happening and thinking of new things. But there is a little bit of improv, especially when I'm making them do some push-ups. Some of that stuff is really stuff that I was like very happy stayed in the film, because it made me laugh at the time. And I was so nice to see audiences laugh at that stuff.
Did you walking away? Was that improv? Like, screw it. You just keep on going then. That rooster, just keep going.
Exactly. What's interesting is it's so crazy. You think okay, like most movie stars or most movie people, in my experience, they're not there for everything, right? They're there for their stuff. Even when the camera is turned on, this happens all the time in television, especially when somebody's done 100 episodes. Like when the camera's not on them, they're not on set. So you'll see somebody sometimes acting with a big star in a TV show, but the star, trust me, is nowhere near. You're just watching the reverse. And here you have the biggest movie ever, and it's not like that at all. Tom is there for all the reverse coverage. Anytime I'm acting with him, the person off camera is Tom Cruise. There are even scenes that he's not even really in that he showed up for. There were scenes when I was doing the push-ups where he would come outside, just hang out and make jokes and be a part of it. I got a sense that he was giddy to finally make this movie too.
He gets kind of a bad rap, right? You hear stories of being a perfectionist, and I always tend to stick up for him because, I have a little bit of that in me too. When you not indirectly surround yourself with incompetent, weak-minded, lazy individuals, and you're trying to accomplish something, you get a little pissed off. That's how he strikes me. As a guy, it's like, I got a vision. This is my project. I want you to be a part of it. We'll be the bestest of friends or the worst of enemies. But dude, you slack off and that's your ass.
You kind of nailed it. I mean, there was this audio that came out during the pandemic from him on Mission Impossible, where he's giving them the business. And I was really heartened to see that the comments were pretty much all like, yeah, we get it. Like, most of us can't even leave the house right now. And you have people who've gone through, at great cost, the ability to be in a bubble so they can make a movie and make some money, right? And not, necessarily sit around wondering how the hell they're going to get through this thing, and also make something that could be timeless. And so that passion was celebrated. Interestingly, I have the good fortune of having worked in this business for long enough to tell you that it's so crazy how many people are the opposite, right? There's so many people who have bad reps, and then you meet them and you go like, oh man, you're great. And here's the other thing, and I learned this a lot, especially when I worked at Jimmy Fallon, because we had new celebrities on every night. So I've met a lot of folks. There's a lot of people who are really wonderful human beings in front of the camera. And then when the camera's off, total jerk. So it's like, there's really, I would say to folks, there's no way to know how somebody is in person until you hang out with them, because what you see in the camera or in interviews, that's all very carefully thought about. It's all scripted. Sometimes with interviews, like, they get the questions in advance and they already know the answers, right? Like, that's where we are with entertainment, because it's all entertainment. And I was really happy that when I met Tom, he was personable. He was excited. He just loves making movies. It's like what gets him out of bed in the morning. He loves his toys. He loves his cars and his planes. He was telling me that when he was growing up, he was definitely that kid who was like on top of the garage, with the bed sheet, jumping off, trying to see if the parachute worked.
Right.
And like, that's insane. He's always kind of been that way. And now he does that for a living. And so, the more I live my life, the more I'm just amazed at how, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Are you able to watch the movie? Well, how many times have you seen it?
I've seen it 3 times.
Okay. Are you able to watch the movie and differentiate between being an actor in the movie and being a fan of the franchise?
Yeah, I am. I think the thing about the filmmakers and also the people Tom picked, we're all movie fans. Look, we love movies. And there's a moment in the movie where my character has an emotional moment, and I found myself watching it and feeling emotional. And I was like, I can't sit here and like have me make me cry. Like, that don't make no sense. Come on, man. And yet that's kind of what was happening is I was having like an emotional connection. And so we're all fans. Everybody in that cast loves movies. We talk about movies. We talk about movie scores. When we have our downtime, it's almost like you're inside the actor studio. I mean, we're all movie nerds. We're all acting nerds. We're all people who love Shakespeare, and we love, the arts and this and that, because this is what our vocation has been, and it's what our passion has been since we were very young. And then you have somebody like Tom who's able to take all that and put it in a bottle, and kind of sell it and have everybody want a piece of it. And so I think this is like a once in a lifetime thing. I certainly don't think this is like, and I'm not, I'm a very big fan of myself, but I also recognize that doing a movie that's a sequel to one of the biggest movies of all time, it took 30 years to come out. It's with a movie star, who has proven to have better longevity than all of his peers. That's not something that's going to happen every day. And I even knew from the very first day on set that I should cherish this because, this is once in a lifetime. Yeah,
but when I say differentiate between an actor and a fan, Bashir, I'm saying when you're watching the movie and you go, like, because maybe the first time the finished product when everything was done, and you're going, oh my God, that's such a great throwback to the original Top Gun, because there's so many throwbacks in the movie. Absolutely. There's call them Easter eggs or whatever say. The flashbacks were brilliantly placed, but they still.
And I didn't know that was going to happen. You're absolutely right. Yeah, all that stuff. I definitely once the credits started, I was a fan again. I was a total fan. I was not a filmmaker, critically looking at the work, saying, "Oh, I didn't like what I did in this scene. This thing could have been no." And I do that with everything I make. I'm always like, I don't want to watch it. I'm going to sit there and pick it apart. But this one, I was a fan. From the beginning, from that very first opening thing when they're on the aircraft carrier, I was like, "Oh, here we go." So yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally stand out on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is how you do it. When you see. People take years later and try to make a sequel or try to make a reboot. This is my biggest problem with superhero movies. I say this all the time. You can't, you know, Man of Steel is one of the worst worst movies ever. Superman doesn't snap necks, you know, and if you're going to have Superman, you're going to have the theme song. That's why you go for the theme song. Same with Batman, I think. You can't be that dark and everything, but as soon as Top Gun Maverick starts, you hear the boom, boom, you know, the score is there. It's like, you can't have Star Wars without a John Williams vibe. It just can't.
That's true. That's true. It's all part of the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even if you watch Obi-Wan right now with Star Wars, it's still got the same score vibe, because I think John Williams' kid actually does some of the stuff. Anyway, who else was up for you?
I can't wait to see that one.
Who did you beat out? Who else was up for the Hondo part?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
No, I really don't know. I don't. I have no idea. I will say, though, you know, typically, if you want to figure that out, though, for Hollywood, and this is for every single actor, every time you go to an audition, you always, it's sort of like, what's that movie, Multiplicity, where you kind of like had, what's his name, and he saw himself.
Michael Keaton.
It's like that. Michael Keaton, yeah. It's like every audition for every actor in Hollywood is like Multiplicity with Michael Keaton. You go into a room and you see yourself. You see 5 of you sitting in that room. Everybody's a little bit different, but they're all kind of generally you. And you kind of go like, okay, so that I know what kind of they're going for, what they're kind of looking for in this part. You kind of have to get through that, though, because that's actually very intimidating when you first get to Hollywood. You know, it's very, like, nerve-wracking, because you go like, well, what shit, man? We all look alike. Well, what's going to separate us? And so you do have to really dig in and focus on your work and what makes you special. I'm lucky, dude. I'm lucky that when they saw my tape, that they saw that Tom felt like there was something special there. And he gave me a compliment on set that I will never, ever, ever forget. You know, and it was right where we're working. I mean, we're doing this really intense scene that at some point he just said, I want you to know just how great you are in this movie. You know, you are passionate, you are compassionate. And he just broke down all this stuff about me and all the reasons why he was a fan of the work I was doing. I mean, what a boost of confidence to get, not after the movie comes out and is successful, but while you're shooting it, when you don't know what's going to happen, and him acknowledging that, for me, I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, and also you thought he was joking, but he was serious. He wanted you to give him information on Southside, which is on Comedy Central.
Yeah, I thought it was, I told that story because it's true, because, you know, I've been to Hollywood long enough. You hear shit all the time. You hear like, oh, I love you, and it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. Yeah. You know, but then in that instance, he was like, no, I really want to see it. And I was like, all right, bro. And I showed it to him, and we actually watched part of it on set because I had made this sizzle reel, and Tom was on set with his family. He's a huge family. People don't know that. He's a big family. He was on set with his family, and we all watched it. And I'm literally watching Tom and his family laugh at, like, jokes that I wrote for a comedy show. And then later on, he's like, well, I want to see the whole thing. And then we showed him the whole thing. I sent it to him, and he called me, talked about it. My wife and I do the show together. He met her at the premiere, and he talked to her about what he loved about the show. And that was just so special for me to see, you know, my wife and, you know, Tom Cruise and me, and we're sitting around talking about the South Side of Chicago. Like that, when does that happen? Yeah. And yet again, I would say it's because you have to live this life. You got to live it to know what's going to happen in it, right? You can't live it. You got to go out your door and go experience things and go pursue your passions, because you have no idea where they're going to take you. There's no way in the world I would have thought doing, you know, playing a very small part in Hamlet at the Whitney Young High School Theater, you know, in 1990, what was that? That's probably 1995, you know, that I would somehow connect the dots between that and shooting with Tom Cruise in an aircraft carrier. Like you don't game plan that. But when it happens, you just kind of go, man, I need to humble myself and be grateful. Yeah.
What is he in your phone? Is he Tom Cruise, or do you have it like incognito in case somebody steals it, like TC?
I have it saved. Like you know, it's interesting. He's not the only one. I'm very fortunate. I work with a lot of folks, and I have a lot of people on my phone, and they all have little code names, and it only makes sense to me. But I was like, you know, but sometimes I get confused and I like forget, and then I was like, oh shoot, and I'll text the wrong thing to the wrong person, and then I'll feel like an idiot. I say, oh man, I just texted Questlove, hey, great job last night playing against the Phillies, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, never mind, I got the wrong name saved here. But you know, it's one of those things.
Bob Saget was Bobby Sags, and that's what he would share his contact as Bobby. You know, God rest his soul. What a great human being. But
Bobby, what a great guy, man. And what an unexpected guy.
Oh my God. And the irony behind all that, my wife and I have been together for about 10 years, and our first date was to go see Bob. And I had, like one of those business, you know what I mean? Those business radio relationships with him. And he came into town and we were broadcasting at Universal Studios. And still to this day, one of my most favorite bits I've ever done. We did a reenactment of a Full House scene as him as Danny Tanner, Danny.
No way.
And we did the rest of the characters, and Nate was there that day, and it was just so much fun, and he was so cool. And so I said, I'm coming to the show at the Hard Rock later, and I'm bringing a date. I really like her. And he's like, cool, let's hang out afterwards. So like everything about the night, there was like so many different stories, but he was there our first date. We hung out afterwards with him, and he ends up passing away at the same hotel that, at the heart. I mean, it crushed me. He's just such a great human being. He was everybody in radio.
Yeah, man. What a icon, really, and unassuming icon at that.
Yeah. So another thing in the movie, and I'm assuming this was strategically done, not necessarily, well, maybe for a little, I'm not a fan of forced political correctness in movies. But I thought about it, and at first I was like, my only issue with this is this possible forced political correctness. And then I thought about it again, and I'm like, you can't do what you used to be able to do in the 80s today if you want to make the money internationally. You can't put China or Russia as the bad guy because you want it released in those countries, and you're just giving up billions of dollars. There was no enemy. I mean, there was an enemy, but you never said who the enemy was.
Just hearing you say that is so funny to me. I'm like, yeah, I guess it probably was easier to make these geopolitical films in the 80s when it was very clear who, as opposed to now where everyone in these countries that are the bad guys are also places that have McDonald's. Yeah. And also places that have Starbucks. And so it's a really complicated world we live in. Obviously, better minds than me have thought about all this stuff. I do know that they had altered his jacket at one point, but then they changed it back. I think that was something that Paramount was in on. Again, I'm not part of those discussions, but I will say the fact that you have a movie that can open worldwide, and like you just said, with a nameless enemy, speaks to the fact that the enemy is actually not even really what the movie's about. I mean, it's called Top Gun Maverick, and I think as you experience, it was really about Maverick and his own personal journey, not just as somebody trying to get these pilots ready, but also somebody trying to figure out his own life vis-a-vis Goose's kid, vis-a-vis Penny, who's another person who's, played by Jennifer Connelly. And I felt like that in some ways is the heart of the film. And that is, I think, what I think they really leaned into. And they didn't really want to lean into, like, the specificity of who the bad people were. They more so wanted to lean into, like, hey, how do you go from being the guy to being a guy who is, like, people are treating as, well, now you're going to just teach, you can't do it, and then you got to prove yourself. And it's all very personal stuff. And I think people don't expect that. I think they expect it just to be a bunch of rah-rah jingoism and explosions. And it's a much deeper film than that.
Yeah, by the way, it's a great high conversation to have with your buddies to figure out who the enemy is.
Yeah, exactly.
You're sitting there and everybody's going to have their 2 cents. I mean, it's only a handful of people it could be. But you're like, dude, you know those people in the Middle East, they got the uranium. So, but there's snow there. Wait a minute, they can't move it to Russia. So it's actually a kind of a fun conversation.
I'm a big fan of the weeds. I smoke them. And I've had many high conversations, and I think that's definitely going to be one on the list. But I got to tell you, the thing about the movie, it's interestingly, the thing that the more I watch it, what I'm really appreciating more are the quiet moments. I'm appreciating more of those little moments where it's just like with Tom and Jennifer, and they're just beautifully lit, and they're just like, no words, there's no dialogue, and they're just trying to figure, and it's so heavy because the audience knows exactly what the hell they're talking about, even though they're not talking. They know exactly what this moment means. The moments where Tom is just on the lift, on the aircraft carrier, just before he goes up to the mission, and it's just like incredible shot of an aircraft carrier lift and the oceans in the background. I just think that some of those little filmic moments are things that I didn't get to watch being made because, I'm only in my scenes, obviously, but I'm really grateful to, Claudio, our director of photography, Joe, our director, that, and Tom, who's a huge film fan, that it's not just about the explosions or even the story. It's also about like appreciating the art of filmmaking, what I think a lot of people don't talk about, but it's a visual medium. And so how do you make it a visual feast? Well, they've done that.
Yeah, and it also adds to the storyline too when you're able to, you know, improv 101 and talk through body language. And I'll give you an example as a fan. After Tom is thrown out of Hard Deck and he's outside, and he's watching Rooster play Great Balls of Fire, and Jennifer Connelly, Penny Benjamin knows what he's thinking, and it's amazing because you feel it, and it kind of fast forwards you in the movie going, okay, so here's the setting. I get it. And they don't say a word.
Yeah. You nailed it, man. I mean, if I'm going to tell you what, I work in television mostly. If that was TV, some network executive would have been like, oh, we don't really know what she's thinking. Can we give her a monologue? And they would have had her say like, oh, he's watching the son of his former you know what I'm saying? Like this goofy stuff. I'm so happy that we have mature filmmakers, that we have people who understand it's a visual medium. The audience will understand the stakes. We're going to play it in a look. This is what the medium is for. You don't get to do that a lot. It's so rare. And I'm happy that a movie that big is also taking those types of swings.
Well, I think what you meant to say, Bashir, was I'm so happy we have mature movie watchers like myself.
Yeah, that too. Yes, it is. Especially people who saw the first Top Gun. We're all mature. I always laugh and say the first Top Gun, I remember when it came out, I didn't go see it. I didn't have any money to go see it. I saw it on cable when it finally happened. I was like, oh, that's really good. But it was like everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. It was like taking over the whole country.
Did you ask or find out? Because I'm curious, how there's just no way the Penny Benjamin thing is so brilliant. For those that Penny Benjamin is Jennifer Connelly plays her character in Top Gun Maverick. She's the love interest. And you're like, well, where does this character come from? Well, if you go back to the original Top Gun, Penny Benjamin's name is mentioned twice. One at the beginning when they get in trouble on the aircraft carrier, the Admiral's daughter, then Meg Ryan in the bar scene, again, doing Great Balls of Fire. I'd just like to warn you about Pete, but that whole scene, oh, Penny Benjamin, oh, God, that kind of thing. I mean, there's no way they wrote this movie at that time. So who went back and said, that's going to be the love interest, Penny Benjamin? Because that's brilliant.
All of them. I think, what's crazy is what people don't know is that, there were many pitches about what the Top Gun sequel would be. I mean, the movie made a little bit of money, and Paramount was probably very eager to make a sequel. And Tom was like, yeah, we'll make it when it's the right script. And it took 30 years. So you have to understand, he's had many people over the years come to him and pitch him, hey, what if the sequel is this? What if the sequel is that? And it wasn't until Joe Kosinski, brilliant director, brilliant visualist, that he is, and his team went to Paris to see Tom and pitched him the whole story. So I think they're the ones who figured out the Penny Benjamin all. They're the ones who figured out the rooster of it all. They're the ones who figured all that stuff out. And so once Tom heard it all and realized that they had sort of cracked it, then he was on board. And then that's where you got the movie you got. But believe me, there's definitely, in an alternate universe, there's 6 other versions of this sequel, and they're all not as good.
Wow. Well, so does Tom Cruise own the rights to Top Gun, or could have somebody just destroyed the franchise and made a totally different spinoff?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not sure how that even works. At my price point, I'm just happy to get the craft service every day that they let me eat. But, I'm just very curious to know how it works. I will say, though, I think one of the keys to his longevity is he's really hands-on, He is not somebody who just shows up and does his little scenes and leaves. I mean, as I said, it really matters to him, every part of it. It matters to him that even characters with one line crush it and nail it and feel like they're the most important character in the movie. That's all very, very important stuff.
Did you get to spend any time with Val Kilmer?
Very little. I was there the day they shot the scene. Well, I don't want to say it is for those who haven't seen it. Yeah. But he was there that day. He's tall. He's taller than I thought he was going to be. Yeah. And then you kind of go like, well, of course he's tall as a movie star. I was just saying this to somebody else. I never really acknowledged how big a deal he was in my movie life. Like, I love Top Secret, one of my favorite movies. Yeah. I loved, Heat. But also, I loved him in The Doors. And I didn't know anything about The Doors or their music before that movie came out. And so, that's one of those ones where, like, I look at this guy and I'm like, man, I've kind of been following you your whole career, and I did never. And by the way, Jennifer Connelly too. Like, I was just thinking about that. I was like, there were the years where Jennifer Connelly is probably the most sought after actress, in Hollywood. We're all loving her, especially in the late '80s. It was like she could do no wrong. And so it's kind of a who's who. And then hopefully with some of the younger pilots, it's like a who's got next, right? Like, that's the balance he was going for. And I think he kind of achieved it. I mean, it just hit.
Oh, yeah. It left a lot of room to continue the franchise, but it didn't do, and thankfully, what a lot of other franchise movies go, where it's like the passing of the torch. This not necessarily was the passing of the torch, literally, but metaphorically it was, which was, I think, very, very, very clever. Don't forget The Saint, Doc Hollywood in Tombstone. Yeah, Val Kilmer, is cool, but it is.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, but
sorry, I didn't mean to get crazy, but yes, I love that.
it is true that Tom Cruise made it a point to include Val Kilmer, even though he can't speak in real life because of the throat cancer, right? I mean, that was on the docket for Tom in order to make this movie, correct?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I will say I'm really, having spent a lot of time with people who are afflicted, who are suffering, I know it is a Herculean feat sometimes to get out of bed. And the fact that Val came and not just delivered, but delivered some of the most powerful stuff in the movie, I'm so grateful to him. And I'm also in awe, because I know other folks would have been like, I don't want to do it. I don't feel good,
Mm-hmm.
And yet he was able to shoulder it, to muster it up, and to get it done. And I really feel like I witnessed real courage and real strength, because that's not easy.
Were the younger actors and actresses, did you get the vibe that they had an appreciation for the franchise?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're all movie fans. As young as they are, they're definitely Tom Cruise fans. And so, again, I think it's certainly there is, when the cameras are rolling, there's bravado, there's arrogance, there's we're all cool, we're all good looking, this and that and the other. When the cameras are not rolling, it's a lot of nerding out over movies. It's a lot of discussions about, filmmakers, about Noah Baumbach and Richard Linklater, and you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it's very like nerd forward in terms of the film love. And it's all very like, what are you working on? I want to write a movie about this. I want to work on that. We're all really sort of geeking out over not just being a part of this, but also over feeling like we've all made a step forward in our careers as people who, are part of this universe of film. And so I really felt like I was in great company, no matter whether, and it's interesting because on screen, it's the older actors and the younger actors, but in reality, when the cameras are rolling, everybody's together. You got John Hamm, and Lewis Pullman all making jokes and stuff, right? Like, we're all just sort of one big group. And let me just shout out John Hamm again and say, that's a funny dude, man. And I work in comedy, and I get it. I always wonder why he works a lot with Tina Fey and some other folks, and I really get it. Yeah. And I told him, I said, I hope we do some comedy stuff, because that guy's really good at it.
Oh, that's what's great. When you look at an actor like John Hamm and go, you look at him in Bridesmaids, or you look at him in Tag, which is a great.
Yeah. Oh my God.
and then you look at him in this movie and you're like, who is this guy? That's serious skill, right? When you can do that.
Yeah, he's got it, man. He's got both. He's got the chops. He's got the comedy and the drama. And also to be somebody who's both a good leading man, but also in this movie, he is the antagonist. He is the sort of he is the wall in Tom's way. And so to be able to play that as well, it also shows not just his talent, but also his humility. He made sure and got that right. I can tell you in my short experience that there's a lot of ego involved in our business, and the best projects are the ones where ego has been put aside and people are just focused on the work. And I think Top Gun Maverick is that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. All right. Let me go around the room here. I'm sure everybody's got some questions for you. Nate, do you have a question for Bashir?
Yeah, Bashir, I read that you are a Harvard graduate, and I think you were like pre-med or a medical degree. What was the catalyst for you to switch to acting and comedy and things like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You have stuff that you say and you have stuff that you do. I was lucky. I was born loving books and loving education and really smart. My mom's a teacher. My dad actually taught for a little bit too after he was a mechanic, he taught a little bit too. And so, I'm from that type of background, and coming from the south side of Chicago where I come from, having an opportunity to be at elite schools like my high school and like Harvard, you want to make sure you give back. And so when I was younger, I was like, you going to be a doctor or you going to be a lawyer, right? That's the discussion. And so I was like, I'll be a doctor. I like science, smart. But then I noticed that even though I was good in the science classes and I said that stuff, what did I do? I did plays, man. I did nothing but plays all through high school. I could not wait. I did The King and I did Hamlet. My high school did Les Miserables. I promise you that's a true story. Like we did, and that's what and in college, of course my academics got me in, but like as soon as I got to college, like the minute I could audition for Othello, I auditioned for Othello. I played the damn thing twice in college. And so ultimately at some point I knew that there was this come to Jesus moment about to happen. I had to call my dad and say, look, I think I'm an actor. I think that's who I am. And it felt like this sort of moment where you have to talk to your parents about who you really are. And I was very worried. I was very scared. And I was very lucky because he was like, I feel like we knew that. And I feel like you would always eventually do something like this. And so he paid for me, and it was not cheap, and we didn't have a lot of money, but he paid for me to go to a theater training program in upstate New York called the Hangar Theater Lab Company. It's a very small little thing in upstate New York in Ithaca. And I just really studied and trained. And that was really the first time I really said, I'm taking it seriously and I want to do this. And then I got to LA, and it was, of course, incredibly hard. And one of those places where you go, this is never going to work out. How does anybody make it here? And you just keep clawing, you keep scraping away at it. And so ultimately, like, I love science to this day. I love math, but my heart is on the stage.
Yeah, but even at Harvard, you were Pitch Perfect before Pitch Perfect, weren't you? I mean, there was that singing idea.
Yeah, we were doing acapella. Oh, by the way, and sadly, let me be real, and those of you who obviously collegial types know, it's not special. There's, I think, maybe 400,000 acapella groups on every college campus. And it's like, you're in class trying to learn, and then they run in and singing stuff, and you're just like, ugh. And then it's one of those things when I first got to college, I was like, I'm from the South, so I was like, man, it's so whack. And then like about 6 months later, I was like, I want to join one, and it was like, you can't help it. Those acapella groups, man, they suck you in. But yeah, we were doing that. We were singing around Boston, and but again, like every college has like a billion acapella groups.
And the name of the group was?
Our group was called Brothers, man.
Brothers. Yeah, Brothers.
We were the Brothers. Brothers
awesome.
sang. We sang cool stuff. And we sang a lot of old spirituals, too. So, like, a lot of people would be listening to us sing, like, a 1920s, dirge and be like, what the hell is this? And we'd be out there just in our little sweaters and khaki pants with our little deck shoes on trying to be cool.
Did you, with that background, did you ever try to audition for any of the Pitch Perfect movies? I love the Pitch Perfect movies, by the way. I think.
You know what's funny? I didn't, but I actually got them. I worked with Anna Kendrick on another movie called A Simple Favor.
Uh-huh.
And she is awesome. She's a very, very cool person. So it was like great. Now, it's interesting. I do sing on both of my TV shows, but I've never really taken it seriously. At some point in the future, I feel like I'd be very lucky, but I'd love to do a musical, like in New York or something, because I still love theater, and I think the best thing about theater is that it's really all ages, in a way that in some ways TV and film is not. But like you could be in your 80s, playing King Lear and still doing it. And so I'm very optimistic that there'll be a part of my own career where I'm able to do a lot more theater, and I'm looking forward to it.
Why don't you write Top Gun Maverick the musical?
Ooh.
First off, how dare you assume I haven't already written it? And I'm putting the finishing touches on it this afternoon, and the world's never going to see it.
and he says that because he's so quick-witted, going, God, that's a brilliant idea, Jason. I am not giving you 20%. It's already in the can. I'm already working on it. That's just how.
I love the negotiation. First off, where do you get 20% from? I think you want to say 5%. Let's start there. And then also, this is something the lawyers will talk about, but, it could all be figured out.
I've got Tourette's. It's just 20%. That's my Tourette go to.
Yeah, right. That's your number. That's a lot.
Brandon, question for Bashir.
I'm glad you brought up a Simple Favor. That's like my favorite chick flick ever. I know you said you worked with Anna Kendrick, and I guess you worked with Blake Lively. But how did that go
Oh
out? Because
yeah,
that's like my favorite actress. Super hot.
Blake is, she is stunning and tall, and it's like I felt the same thing when we first met Tom Cruise, because the first time I met him was at a table and he came in. I was like, whoa, all right, I get it. That's a movie star. And Blake is similar. She comes on, she strides onto set, and you go like, whoa, okay, I get it. That's a star. Very kind, very funny. You know who she's married to, so I'm sure that's a household that is rich in comedy. But, we only had one scene together. But ultimately, I spent most of my time with Anna. And, of course, she's also just a real pro. And I learned a lot about her background. But it was kind of cool to be a part of that. I read that they're doing a sequel to that movie, too. So
Hell yeah.
I'm like, I'm very curious to see it. But I'm also, like, really excited because I love working on that. Paul Feig is, like, my favorite. That is a real sort of, like, filmmaker in the old school. And I was lucky to be able to be a part of that.
Does it ever get weird? Like, take Blake Lively, for example. She's had some steamy moments in movies like Savages, which is a fantastic movie. And then work with them after seeing, I know it's acting, it's a job, and you're being professional and stuff, but you're still.
Yeah. What's funny is I think I never saw that scene. It's funny to say it's never awkward. It is. I've done a couple scenes like that. I did one on Glow that I had to watch with my wife next to me, where I ended up having a sort of a sex scene with my TV wife, played by Sidel. And so it's always super awkward to be a part of something like that. And it's always like, it's not like you're alone, right? There's like, they're really good nowadays where they'll make sure there's an intimacy coordinator and they'll make sure there's as few people as possible. But at the end of the day, you're still fake humping in a room with like some dude holding a pole. Like, all right, come on. It's like, it's weird. And so, but that's the work, right? And you kind of have to just do it. Again, when I see other actors who've done stuff like that, I can relate because I've done it. But it doesn't really come up. You kind of just want to focus on this thing. And also, I'll be honest, like I'm always a little nervous when I'm on set, like always. And I'm always a little bit in my own head. And I think that's just being a human being, right? You always think everybody's thinking about you, but then if you think about it, you're only thinking about yourself. And I think we all are. And so, I really try to spend most of my time on set just kind of breathing and trying to stay calm and be present for the work so that I don't start geeking out and being like, oh my God, I'm in a scene with Anna. And then the work is not good.
I was a fan of Glow. I liked it. I watched it as a kid growing up. I'm a wrestling fan. And your character, Keith Bang, was great. But there were some steamy scenes in that. And Mark Maron, of course. He doesn't like Mark Maron, but there was a good
That's a dude, man. I love that guy. That's a funny dude, man. he is. If you ever, anybody listening, if you ever get a chance to do a movie or anything with Mark, do it, because that is a funny dude.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, he's not his character from Glow, but he is a throwback. Like, he is very kind of old school, kind of like, comedy seller, New York comic vibe, and I think that's something you don't really see nowadays. Comics now, I feel like a lot of them are sort of on the internet. There's a whole new generation. They're playing to that. And Mark, to me, he's so talented, but he also feels like that deep wittiness you get when you're like, it's 2 a.m. at a comedy club and you're at a table with a bunch of like hitters. And he's very comfortable in that environment. That's a very intense environment.
This might not make any sense to anyone, but Mark Maron's face wants me to buy Buster Brown shoes and eat a big fat pretzel afterwards. If you've ever bought Buster Brown shoes as a kid, they would give you these fat pretzels.
I know what those are.
So
he kind of reminds me of, it's funny hearing you say that. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Johnny Fever, right? Like a little bit of that, WKRP.
Yeah, WKRP. And says, yeah, he does have that kind of.
Yeah, come on now.
Puts the hat on and the strawy kind of weird hair kind of pokes out a little bit. Yeah. I gotcha. Jill, question for Bashir.
Hey, Bashir, big fan. I just saw the movie, and when Jason told me that we were talking to you, I nerded out instantly. So my question, I just wanted to ask, with the hype of the movie and everything that happened, would you say that this has been your most favorite project to work on? And if not, what has been?
this is the biggest project I've ever worked on. It's certainly intense. You know, when you make a movie, you kind of make it in pieces. And so, interestingly, you'll have like on Monday, you're on an aircraft carrier with Tom Cruise and you're acting. And then on Wednesday, it's 3 a.m. and you're changing doo-doo diapers. And you're by yourself in the house and everybody's asleep except the kid is up. So, you know, you kind of have to go back and be a real person a lot. I will say, I have to say the best project I ever worked on was my dream project, was my own TV show, Southside, on HBO Max. That's a project that for years, and I'll be brief with this, for years I've had my work rejected. You can't work in Hollywood and not have your work rejected. I was no different than that. So I had TV shows and movies and things that I loved, that I was passionate about, that I would kill for, and they all and Hollywood was like, nope, and they all went away. And then finally, this thing that I love more than anything actually somehow made it through the maze to get to television, and that's Southside. And for me, it was so special because, you know, I'm from the South Side of Chicago. It's a place where you don't really get a lot of great news on the news, and yet my experience of the place is very different. It's very joyful. It's happy. It's silly. There's definitely some challenges, but overall, you know, we have a good-ass time. And so the idea that I could do a show that could share that with other people, I mean, that will always be the most special thing.
I'm assuming you'd get jaded, or some people can get jaded. I know I would. That's just how I work, is that if you know how good you are, you know how talented you are, you know how great said script is that you've written, and you get rejected, and then now you're Hondo and you're Top Gun Maverick or Southside, and it's the popularity. And now people want to work with you, those same people that were rejecting you. I would go fuck yourself. I don't want to work. I'll find somebody else. But I guess you can't. You got to.
Somebody give me. I got great advice one time from a writer. He said, "Don't be a sore winner." And I never thought about that before, but he was right, because you're exactly right. You cannot help but have a show finally make it to air and say, "I told you so." Go F yourself, everybody but you know, all that stuff is not going to help you. It's not going to help you make the show good. It's not going to help you make the show better. It won't make up for all those times in the past where your work was rejected, you didn't get the part you wanted, and you really had no way to make your rent. And I know what that feels like. I've been there many times. I've sat there being $200 short of my rent and being like, how the hell am I going to find $200? Like, I've been there. I know what that is. And so all those things are things that everybody has to go to. You're not special. Everybody has tough things in their life. Everybody has a tough road. Everybody has somebody out there who does not believe in them and is their enemy. And you know, we all in your heads right now know there's somebody like, yeah, that person's a hater. All that stuff, though, has nothing to do with what you're trying to do. And so for me, whenever I got advice that said, hey, just focus on the things that are working, I think I have to take that seriously.
Yeah, you're the smart guy. That's ration. That's voice of reason right there. That's the stuff you're
I mean, you know, deep down, I want to be mad about it and be like, man, forget y'all, you know, ha, ha, ha. But it's like, you know, we got to let's just focus. Let's do the next thing. I don't want to give that any energy because, you know, frankly, the situation has resolved itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in an interesting situation because, you know, your partner in crime, Diallo Riddle, you know, you guys met at Harvard. Like I said, I think I started the conversation, an Atlanta guy, but you guys, you created Southside and you're the bestest of buddies and this and this and that. And not to take anything away from his success, but he's not in Top Gun and you are. And now everybody's...
But there was a moment where he was on Marlon. He was on an NBC show for 2 seasons, and I wasn't. And I was absolutely the guy going with him to the Hollywood parties, and people were like, "Who are you?" So, you know, it's just interesting. That's why you have to be able to be like aware of how long this stuff is. You know, the pendulum swings both ways, and sometimes you're, you know, as Chris Rock said, sometimes you're playing tambourine, sometimes you're lead singer.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at here is, has your buddy pulled you aside and said, hey, look, I'm really happy for your success, but don't leave me. You know, these teams break up. It's like a tag team. It's like the Dudley Boys breaking up. I can't believe it happened.
You know, I'm going to give him some credit right now. Diallo does not need me. There was a time when we needed each other, and where both of our names together was the thing keeping our rent paid when we were doing writing jobs. And now we're at a space where we still work together, but it's much more out of joy and much less out of necessity. If for some reason our partnership were to end, he would be, first off, I don't think it will, because we really enjoy the way we've figured out how to make it work as writing partners and business partners. And I've known him since I was like, damn, I've known that dude since I was like 19. So that's like 30-something years. That's crazy. Or 20-something years, rather. That's crazy. But the point is that he is very successful in his own right. And, you know, I feel like, you know, if by some, like I said, if there was some terrible event and then we ended up taking some time and not working together, I think his success would continue. Yeah. And I would hope mine would too. In fact, I'd be worried, like, oh man. Because, you know, you get that in Hollywood where, you know, there's no safety net, right? There's no vocation. There's no education. This is not grad school. It's like the scariest moment of my life was watching all my friends after college go off to grad school and business school and go off to safe structures for the next steps of their lives. And my ass is moving to LA with working as a temp and being like, oh God, what's going to happen? So it was terrifying. But you know, you kind of develop armor and you develop the ability to see how tough you are. And I'm very fortunate in that I can take a punch.
I can see you doing a movie in the future with The Rock. You two, you look like you would have a good chemistry with The Rock.
Hell yes. I would love that. And, you know, that would be awesome. He's also somebody who I don't know him. I saw him one time in person. He's a star. And I feel like that dude is probably really funny. And I know that he's in every one of his movies, he always showcases a little bit of his comedy chops. So I think that would be a blessing.
Hondo and Hobbs. I could see that, you know.
Let's go. Come on, do this. I love that movie, by the way. The one with him, Statham, and Idris. I thought that was great. So yeah. I was a big fan of that movie.
I'm decked out in all Project Rock stuff. I'm a huge Rock fan. People always say to me,
and I love wrestling, so I love this for a long time. Yeah.
They'll say, you look like Seth MacFarlane, you look like Peter Brady, you look like Donny Osmond. And I'm like, yeah, I get that a lot. But when I'm at the beach with my shirt off, I look like The Rock. And ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, there you go. Let him know. Shoot. Come on now. All you got to have is some coconut oil like we did in Top Gun. You know what I'm saying? Keep it shiny and slick for the ladies.
There's a lot of makeup sweat in that movie. I mean, and it was well placed inspiration. I got to tell you.
You know what was interesting is that was actually a really important thing to Tom because of the first Top Gun. I think what he discovered making that movie and then watching it was how, because that movie is also, everybody's sweaty all the time. That movie is hot. It's a bunch of, that movie is like no air conditioning and a fan that kind of works. Like that's the original Top Gun. It's a room with no air conditioning. And I think he really felt like watching it that elevated the drama. And so for this film, he made sure that that's one of the elements we kept from the original. And there are lots and lots and lots of little things like that, more than I even know, where he was really, really integral in making sure that this little small thing that happened in the original is something that kind of plays throughout the sequel.
You know what's, I just thought about this, and then we'll let you go. But, you know, in both Top Guns, you know, we're talking about the enemy, you know, the first Top Gun, obviously it was Russia, but this one, there's no name of we don't know who has the uranium, but in both Top Guns, you never see the face of the enemy. You see them in a helmet, but you never actually see a full face. That's amazing to have two huge blockbuster movies with a big villain, and never see a face. You ever think about that?
You know, yeah. I don't envy the balancing act that they have to do nowadays in a global film world to make this stuff work, but they figure it out, you know. And also the other thing that's a little bit funny to me is when you see actual aviation, like they very rarely, if ever, take their masks off in the cockpit. And yet when you do movies, like, you know, the actor's face is so important. So in all those movies, you have to take the mask off in the cockpit a lot of times, because otherwise the audience is just watching, you know, robot face man, right? Which nobody wants to see that. So you got to see who these actors are. And so it is, but that's part of it. So the enemies in some ways are very accurate because they keep their masks on, you know, the entire movie, as they're supposed to in the airplanes before they blow up.
That's crazy. All right. Well, everybody go see Top Gun Maverick. Bashir Salahuddin, Hondo, great character. Bashir, I'm so glad we got to meet. You're such a talented guy, and you're going to do such great things. And we'll just rerun this conversation over and over again. Say we're friends.
I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. See you, Bashir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.